Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, where we talk all things Marvel and MCU, and She-Hulk Episode 2 is now out. I apologize for not having a watch party for it last night. I had some family stuff to deal with that I'm still currently dealing with, so this breakdown will be a little shorter than normal. But we'll be back at it with the watch parties next week. Now, She-Hulk Episode 2 is pretty straightforward. However, there are some pretty major Easter eggs that we need to talk about. Of course, we have the big Hulk Easter egg, basically confirming that we are indeed going to be getting a Hulk solo film, probably World War Hulk, which we'll talk about. And we have a Wolverine Easter egg. It does kind of seem like they have confirmed that Wolverine does exist in the MCU. Now, Marvel Studios has already confirmed that mutants are now in the MCU. They did that with Miss Marvel, Kamala Khan being the first mentioned mutant of the MCU. However, don't let this confuse you, because in Miss Marvel they clearly stated that it's her genetics that make her different. It's her genetics that make her a mutant, the X gene. So just because Miss Marvel was the first mutant introduced to us in the MCU does not mean that she is the first mutant period in the MCU. In fact, some deleted concept art from Miss Marvel shows a cosplayer dressing up as Cyclops as an X-Men. Not just Cyclops himself, but Cyclops, who is a member of the X-Men because he wore the X symbol on his chest. So if that concept art tells us anything, it tells us that the X-Men are probably already a team inside of the MCU. However, I don't think Wolverine is a part of that team yet. Let's dive right into the Wolverine Easter egg. So in this episode, we obviously see the aftermath of Jen turning into She-Hulk in the courtroom. Now, ultimately, Jen saves everybody in the courtroom, specifically the jury from Titania. This leads to her boss meeting her in the bar and basically tells her that the judges and the jury were biased towards her because they saved her life and she's a superhero. And this is a huge liability for the firm, so they have to let her go. And when her boss entered, she was in She-Hulk form, so she wasn't drunk, but he asked her to go back to Jennifer Walters form, in which she does, but then immediately becomes very drunk. So she kind of doesn't follow everything, but when he says that she's fired, she snaps into it and realizes what he's saying. Now, after this, a little bit of time goes by and we can see Jen Walters applying for different jobs at law firms. If you notice the background of each firm, she starts off at a really nice, really fancy law firm, probably a pretty big one, but as we see her take more and more interviews, you can actually see the quality of the firm and the office degrade. It starts off with really nice offices and goes down gradually to a really bad office, showing us that she can't even get a job at a really bad law firm. So she ends up searching for jobs, and we can see her looking for these jobs on her laptop, in which there's a huge Easter egg for Wolverine. There's also an Easter egg for Iron Man. We can see that there's an advertisement for Iron Man 3s, and these are basically modeled off of Air Jordans, and it is a very Tony Stark thing to have his own sneaker line. Now, since they're Iron Man 3s, Tony Stark himself might have actually started this sneaker line when he was alive, starting of course with the Iron Man 1, or maybe even called it the Iron Man Mach 1, just like his first suit. Also, to the left of that, there's a barcode. Marvel seems to be putting these barcodes in each Disney Plus episode that they have. If you scan that, you can get a free digital She-Hulk comic. But here's where the huge Easter egg for Wolverine comes in. Below the Iron Man 3s, we can see related articles, and one of them says man fights with metal claws in bar brawl. Now, it's really hard to believe that this could be an Easter egg for anything else besides Wolverine. Metal claws and bar brawl. The metal claws have to be referring to Wolverine's adamantium claws, and let's face it, we know Wolverine likes to get into bar brawls. This means that Wolverine might already exist in the MCU, and like I mentioned before about the X-Men Easter egg, it looks like the X-Men and a bunch of other mutants probably already exist in the MCU as well. Now, based off of the concept art showing us Cyclops in his X-Men uniform, that probably means the X-Men team is established. However, since they don't know who Wolverine is and simply say a man with claws, that means that Wolverine has most likely not been recruited for the X-Men yet. Otherwise, he would probably be known. So the article would state Wolverine gets into a bar brawl, not man with metal claws. Regardless of whether or not he is with the X-Men or has been contacted by Professor Xavier or any other X-Men yet, this is still a very huge confirmation that Wolverine does exist in the MCU right now. The mutants are in the MCU, and hopefully we'll get some sort of an announcement of when to expect the mutants at Disney's D23 Expo that is coming next month. Now, below this, you can also find an Easter egg for the Eternals. There's another article with the headline, "Why There Is a Giant Statue of a Man Sticking Out of the Ocean." This is a direct reference to the end of the Eternals, where Tiamat is essentially being born and coming out of the ocean. Now, Sersi managed to stop him by transforming his matter into stone, essentially, but he was sort of just left there, and the Eternals were then taken away. So really, I don't think the humans have any type of explanation as to how that got there, so right now they're actually calling it a stone stone statue and don't realize that it's actually a celestial. A dead celestial, but a celestial. Now, of course, I would say the second biggest Easter egg, because the Wolverine Easter egg would be the biggest one, is that Hulk is returning to Sakaar. Jen gets an offer for a new law firm that wants her to lead a super division of the law firm. And this is exactly what happens in the comics. However, her first client would be Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination, and this is obviously kind of a conflict of interest with her, considering how he tried to kill her cousin. Now, obviously, Jen wants to be a lawyer again. And although this is not an ideal situation for her, she wants to take the opportunity, but doesn't want to really make her cousin Bruce Banner mad. So she calls him up and tells him the situation, pretty much already having made up her mind that she is going to accept the job and is going to represent Emil Blonsky. But Hulk says he's okay with it, and that Emil actually wrote him a nice little poem. So all is forgiven, but we learn that the Hulk is heading towards Sakaar. Now, if you've been following the channel the past few weeks, you know that we've been talking a lot about the Hulk's future solo movie, very heavily rumored to be a World War Hulk storyline. And it looks like this is actually going to center somewhat around the Hulk's son, Sakaar, which is probably who he is visiting, and the one who most likely sent him the message. Now, in the comics, in Planet Hulk, in the World War Hulk storyline, the Illuminati basically determine on their own that the Hulk is too dangerous to keep on the planet, so they trick him and send him into space. He eventually lands on the planet Sakaar, and he becomes a gladiator. He ultimately starts a revolution like Korg did, but is successful and eventually rules over Sakaar. He finds himself a wife, she gets pregnant, but then the ship that the Illuminati sent him there on explodes, killing his wife and his unborn child. Now from there, the Hulk is super pissed, so he decides to return to Earth to get revenge. He first stops at the moon, defeats Black Bolt, then goes to Earth and defeats pretty much all of the superheroes. The Hulk gets so enraged and he gets so mad that even a step from the Hulk is starting to break the Earth, so he tells Tony Stark to use a machine on him to stop him from becoming the Hulk and stop him from destroying the Earth. Now eventually the Hulk goes on to find out that his son actually is alive. However, in the comics at least, his son kind of sucks, and he wants to kill him. However, he is a Hulk, and he is incredibly strong. And this is probably at least somewhat of the story that we're going to see in the Hulk solo film. Based off of the rumors that we've heard so far, it is kind of going to be like another Civil War story in the MCU, with sides having to be taken. Now, we don't know if the Avengers are going to get involved, but the battle will most likely be between the Hulk and his son. Or if the Hulk's son is killed in this, we could actually see the Hulk turn into the actual Hulk, the extremely rageful monster that cannot be stopped. I'm hoping that happens whether or not his son dies. I'm hoping something happens to make the Hulk just insanely rageful and we get a true Hulk in the MCU again, not a smart Hulk. So She-Hulk episode 2 ultimately ends with Jennifer Walters taking the case of Emil Blonsky. However, the media releases a video of Emil/Abomination fighting Wong in an underground tournament, which we saw in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So this is what she is going to have to deal with next episode, trying to prove that her client is innocent, while also at the same time there is proof out there that he escaped his prison cell. However, since we've seen many of the trailers and have seen Wong in Jennifer Walters' office, and in the prison cell sitting at a desk with the microphone, it does seem like Wong is going to at least attempt to help Jennifer out. But we'll figure that out in the next episode. In the meantime, let me know what you think about these two insanely huge Easter eggs in She-Hulk episode 2. Let me know your thoughts down below about Wolverine and World War Hulk. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest MCU news. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.